Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. The air inside the Abbott mansion carried a quiet elegance that usually brought Diane Jenkins Abbott a sense of peace. The soft lighting, the familiar scent of polished wood, the faint hum of distant city life beyond the windows, all of it was supposed to feel like safety, like stability, like the life she had fought so hard to rebuild. But tonight, none of it felt stable. Diane stood near the grand staircase, her arms folded tightly across her chest as she watched Jack Abbott pace slowly across the living room. His expression was thoughtful, distracted, and worst of all, conflicted. Again, Jack, Diane finally said, her voice calm but laced with unmistakable tension. You've been quiet ever since you left the ranch. Jack stopped packing, he glanced at her then looked away, exhaling slowly. It was just Nikki, he replied, trying to sound casual. She needed someone to talk to. Diane's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Of course it was Nikki. It was always Nikki. For weeks now, Jack's loyalty to Nikki Newman had been an ongoing thorn in Diane's side, not because she didn't understand their history, she did. She knew exactly how deep their bond ran, but that bond came with consequences. Nikki was still tied to Victor Newman, still entrenched in the endless web of Newman drama, manipulation, and power plays. And every time Nikki spiraled into another crisis, Jack ran straight to her side. You don't just talk to Nikki, Diane said quietly, you drop everything. Jack turned toward her fully now. She's a friend, Diane, a longtime friend. And Victor, Diane pressed, is he still a friend too? Because every time Nikki leans on you, Victor benefits, somehow he always does. Jack's eyes flashed slightly at that. This isn't about Victor. It always becomes about Victor, Diane shot back, her composure slipping just enough to reveal the frustration underneath. Silence settled between them, thick, complicated, familiar. Despite everything, they were still solid, still strong. Their marriage had survived scandals, secrets, and second chances that most couples never recovered from, but the Nikki issue kept resurfacing like a crack beneath polished marble. And neither of them realized yet that Nikki was about to become the least of their worries. Miles away, inside a secured mental health facility, a woman sat quietly at a small table, unwrapping a piece of candy with delicate precision. Patty Williams smiled to herself. It was the kind of smile that looked harmless at first glance, almost childlike, but there was something deeper behind it, something calculating, something simmering. She tilted her head slightly as she listened to the faint chatter of the staff down the hall. Voices drifted in and out, muffled and distant, but one name caught her attention like a spark hitting dry tinder. Mariah Copeland, possible intake soon. Patty's fingers froze mid-motion. Mariah. Her eyes lit up slowly. Oh, she whispered softly, almost gleefully, that's interesting. She leaned back in her chair, rocking gently, her mind already racing far beyond the sterile walls around her. Because if Mariah Copeland was coming here, that meant stories, gossip, secrets. And Patty loved secrets. Especially the ones connected to Genoa City. Especially the ones connected to Jack Abbott. Her smile widened. Back in Genoa City, Diane stood alone in the Abbott living room long after Jack stepped outside to take a call. The house suddenly felt too quiet, too still, like the calm before something she couldn't quite name. She walked over to the fireplace, staring into the faint glow as her thoughts drifted. Jack's loyalty to Nikki had been an issue, yes. But it wasn't new. What was new was the unease she couldn't shake, a strange, lingering feeling that something bigger was looming, something darker than old Newman drama. Her phone buzzed suddenly on the coffee table. Diane picked it up, expecting a routine message. Instead, her expression shifted instantly. The message was from an unknown number. Some ghosts never forget, Diane. Her breath caught. She stared at the screen, her pulse quickening. Before she could react, another message appeared. You stole my life once. Diane's hand trembled slightly now. And then the final message came. I'm coming back for what's mine. The phone nearly slipped from her fingers. Because deep down, in a place she rarely allowed herself to revisit, she already knew who it could be. And she hadn't thought about Patty Williams in years. Inside the facility, Patty hummed softly to herself as she scribbled something on a notepad, hearts, swirls, a name written over and over again. Jack, Jack, Jack. Her expression suddenly darkened as another name was written beneath it. Diane. The pen pressed harder now, the letters jagged. Diane Jenkins Abbott, Patty murmured sweetly as if tasting the name. Still in the way, aren't you? Her smile vanished completely. Memories flooded her mind, sharp, vivid, and painfully alive. The affair. The betrayal. The baby she lost. The moment her entire world shattered because Jack chose Diane. That trauma had never truly left her, it had only been buried beneath layers of treatment, time, and forced stability. But now she was hearing whispers of Genoa City again. Hearing Jack's name again. And soon she might be seeing familiar faces again. Especially if Mariah arrived. Because Patty knew something about institutions. People talked. Staff got careless. Doors opened. And opportunities appeared. She leaned forward, whispering to herself with eerie excitement. If Diane wasn't there, Jack wouldn't be distracted. Her eyes gleamed. If Diane wasn't there, Jack could finally see me again. A nurse walked past, glancing at Patty cautiously. Everything all right today, Patty? Patty instantly switched expressions, smiling brightly. Oh yes, I'm feeling much better, clearer, happier. The nurse nodded, relieved. But the moment the nurse disappeared down the hall, Patty's smile twisted into something far more dangerous. Clearer indeed. Clear enough to remember everything. Clear enough to plans. Clear enough to escape. Back at the Abbott mansion, Jack re-entered the living room to find Diane standing stiffly, her face pale. Diane, he asked gently, what's wrong? She slowly handed him her phone. Jack read the messages, his expression hardening with each line. This could be anyone, he said carefully, though the tension in his voice betrayed his concern. Diane shook her head slowly. No, she whispered, it can't be just anyone's. Jack looked at her, searching her eyes. And then she said the name neither of them had dared to speak in years. Patty. The room fell into a chilling silence. Because if Patty Williams was truly coming back into the picture, then Nikki Newman's drama would be the least of their worries. And Diane Jenkins Abbott might be walking straight into grave danger without even realizing it. Across the facility, Patty folded her note neatly and slipped it into her pocket as alarms quietly buzzed in the distance, routine sounds, ignored by most patients. But Patty noticed everything. She always had. Her gaze shifted toward the exit hallway. And her whisper echoed softly in the empty room. Genoa City, I'm not finished with you. Her smile returned wider than ever. And far more terrifying. The tension at the Abbott mansion grew heavier with each passing hour, like an invisible storm cloud hovering over Jack and Diane's carefully rebuilt life. Neither of them said it out loud, but the name Patty lingered in the air, refusing to fade. Jack set Diane's phone down slowly, his expression grave. It's been years, he said, though his tone lacked conviction. Patty has been in treatment, supervised, contained. Diane let out a quiet, uneasy laugh. Contained? Jack, this is Patty Williams we're talking about, the woman who once reinvented herself with fake identities just to stay in your orbit. Jack flinched slightly at the memory. Because she wasn't wrong. Patty's obsession had never been simple infatuation. It had been consuming, dangerous, fueled by heartbreak that had never healed. The affair with Diane decades ago had shattered Patty in ways that still echoed through every chapter of her life. The miscarriage, the emotional collapse, the rage that had led her to pull a trigger and shoot the man she loved. And somehow, even after everything, her fixation on Jack had never truly died. Jack rubbed his temples. We don't even know if it's her. But deep down he knew. The wording of the message. The tone. The haunting familiarity. It felt personal. Too personal. Diane walked toward the window, staring out at the dark Genoa City skyline. You always said Nikki was the biggest complication in our marriage, she murmured, but Nikki never tried to erase me from existence. Jack's eyes snapped toward her. Diane, don't jump to conclusions. I'm not jumping, she replied quietly, I'm remembering. Silence followed, thick with history neither of them could erase. Meanwhile, at the mental health facility, the arrival of a new patient stirred subtle whispers among staff and residents alike. Mariah Copeland had arrived. She looked exhausted, emotionally drained, and distant as she was escorted down the hallway. Her thoughts were consumed with guilt, fear, and the weight of everything that had happened with Dominic. She barely noticed the woman sitting quietly at the corner table, watching her with unsettling focus. Patty Williams. Patty's eyes sparkled with recognition the moment she heard the name Mariah spoken aloud. Mariah Copeland, Patty whispered softly, tapping her fingers together, from Genoa City. Mariah sat down heavily across the room, unaware she was being studied like a puzzle piece that had suddenly fallen into place. It didn't take long. Patients talked. Staff gossiped. And within hours, Patty had learned more than enough. Jack Abbott. Diane Jenkins Abbott. Still married. Still living at the Abbott mansion. Still happy. Her smile disappeared instantly. Happy. The word echoed in her mind like an insult. She gripped the edge of the table, her breathing slow but sharp. They built a life, she muttered, after everything. Her thoughts spiraled rapidly now, memories flooding back with terrifying clarity. Jack choosing Diane. Jack betraying her. Jack moving on while she lost everything. Her child. Her sanity. Her future. Her eyes darkened. If Diane wasn't there, she whispered again, her voice colder than before. A nurse approached cautiously. Patty, are you all right? Patty instantly softened her expression, nodding sweetly. Oh yes, I was just thinking about old friends. And for the first time in years, her mind felt sharper than ever. Not broken. Not scattered. Focused. Dangerously focused. Late that night, a small commotion erupted in the facility's west wing. Nothing major, just a door malfunction, a brief lapse in supervision, a distraction that lasted less than 3 minutes. 3 minutes was all Patty needed. By the time staff realized something was wrong, her room was empty. The window slightly opened. The bed perfectly made. And one chilling message left behind on a scrap of paper. Time to go home. Back in Genoa City, Diane jolted awake in the middle of the night, her heart racing. She didn't know why. No sound. No disturbance. Just a deep, instinctive dread she couldn't explain. She sat up in bed, glancing toward the doorway as if expecting someone to be standing there. The hallway was empty. But the feeling remained. Like she was being watched. Like something from the past was moving closer with every passing second. Beside her, Jack stirred. Diane, what is it? She swallowed hard. I don't feel safe. Jack immediately sat up, concern flooding his expression. Why would you say that? She hesitated before answering. Because Patty never stopped loving you, Diane said quietly, and people like Patty don't let go, they wait. Jack's face turned pale. Because he knew exactly how true that was. Across town, a taxi pulled to a quiet stop just outside the edge of Genoa City limits. The passenger door opened slowly. Patty stepped out, her eyes scanning the familiar surroundings with eerie delight. The city lights reflected in her gaze as a slow smile crept across her lips. Genoa City, she whispered, did you miss me? She adjusted her coat, her movements calm, calculated, nothing like the unstable woman people remembered. She wasn't coming back as a patient. She was coming back with a purpose. And that purpose had a name. Diane Jenkins Abbott. Patty's eyes narrowed as she looked toward the direction of the Abbott mansion in the distance. You took my place, she murmured softly. Her voice turned chillingly sweet. But I can take it back. At the Abbott mansion, Diane stood frozen near the staircase the next evening, her breath catching as the doorbell rang unexpectedly. Jack frowned. "Are we expecting anyone?" Diane slowly shook her head. A strange, overwhelming dread filled the room as Jack walked toward the door. He opened it, and his entire body went rigid. Standing on the doorstep, smiling sweetly, eyes shining with obsession and history and something far more dangerous than either of them remembered, was Patty Williams. "Hello, Jack," she said softly, tilting her head like no time had passed at all. "Did you miss me?" Diane's blood ran cold, because in that moment she realized something terrifying. This wasn't the unstable, rambling Patty from years ago. This was a clearer, smarter, more focused Patty. And her gaze slowly shifted past Jack, locking directly onto Diane with unsettling intensity. "That's all right," Patty continued gently. "You don't have to say anything." Her smile widened. "I came to fix everything." The door remained open. The past had returned, and Diane had just become Patty's primary target in a way far more dangerous than anyone in Genoa City was prepared for.